On this episode of the Layover Live, Jason Holic stops by to talk about the Impactulator. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 170 of the Layover Live, where we bring you the top article from the Layover each week. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights here at SimpleView, so welcome to this week's show. Super happy to have you here. Now, more and more DMOs are being tasked with finding ways to measure the impact of what they do. It's become clear over the past 18 months, and even before that the old ways of measuring performance of our marketing efforts are really no longer enough. Now, our article of the week this week comes from fastcompany.com, so take a look at that. It talks about, really how did it help determine ROI with your marketing efforts, and I think this is something that is difficult for many. And trust me, this isn't an issue that's solely for destination marketers, as many marketers around the world face similar type of problems. Measuring the impact of marketing and quickly identifying the specific ways to improve the ROI of our marketing spend has never been an easy task for any of us. The challenge has gotten even more difficult, in fact, with the disruption of changes that are coming by the way of Apple, which seems like on a weekly basis, third-party cookies, the explosion of all these streaming networks and connected TV, social networks, digital ad platforms, and more. Now, ultimately, as destination marketers, our job typically is to create demand for our destinations and influence travel. However, there are often many factors that can affect visitation, making the effectiveness of our efforts even that much more difficult to measure or even communicate in that fact to our stakeholders. DMOs have been at the forefront of tourism efforts within our communities for years, but I think the challenge of being able to claim their share of impact on those efforts remains. Our guest today, however, is here to change that and maybe make things a little bit easier for you. So Jason Holic is the Vice President of Business Applications and Insights at Experience Kissimmee and creator of the Impactulator. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking to myself in the mirror in the morning, right? So I can say, hello, Jason, how are you? Good, Jason, you're doing fine. Yeah. I'm doing super. It's like our ultimate personalities, but great, man. Hey, best name in the world, so happy to have you here. But I think for those, Jason, I've got to know you a little bit over the last few weeks. We're out at eTourism together, which was great. Saw this great, amazing presentation that you gave, and I was like, man, I got to get this guy on. He's excellent. But I think a lot of folks out there might not know who you are. So maybe just a little background for those that don't know you.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in the DMO space for just over 6 years, and I've been in my current role for 3. And most of the time I've been kind of in the background, I would say, just working on projects, getting them to kind of speak for the destination on behalf of all of the rest of us in the background. I started out as the VP of Digital Marketing at Experience Kissimmee, and my first big project was launching a new website, which has been online since about 2016, 2017. And we are due for a refresh. But as part of my new role, I'm focusing on the strategic plan for the organization, among some other things, and including this new product, Impactulator, which we'll get into a little bit more detail. And I did some other similar kind of modeling projects before I was in the DMO space during my about 3 years with Universal Orlando Resort.
Yeah, I'm sure. Again, a lot of data there, I'd imagine, a lot of I would say data just in general, as you saw from eTourism and other conferences. Boy, it's really hot right now. And data by itself is not enough, right? We have to be able to find ways to be able to parse through that and be able to get insights out of it so that we can make more effective decisions. So, and the Impactulator, I think, is one way to be able to do that. So let's just get right into that first and foremost. What exactly is this tool and what does it do?
So what the tool does is it adopts the existing data that you have, and it kind of puts it together in a model that helps communicate what your value is to the community that you serve as a DMO. And it does it in a way that doesn't conflict with the sources of data and the research that you already have in the market that you've worked to build trust around. So for example, if you have already your economic impact study for the destination as a whole, well, this fits right in. It basically says that the economic impact study that you have for the destination is the pie, and Impactulator carves out what that slice of pie is for the DMO using other data sources that, again, you've already established that trust in. If you've got a Arrive list, if you've got your marketing agency providing you with some of the bigger metrics, all that feeds into it. So it helps create the story that already exists. It's just you need that tool to help kind of stitch it all together.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. And I got to imagine that's a challenge, right? But let's get into like the reason for creating this in the first place, right? I think because this is something that I think a lot of DMOs could use. But let's get into how did this tool really come about? Why did you create it in the first place? How did this thing even just come about?
Yeah, so kind of a lot of things at play in the inception of the product itself. It started out kind of as a curiosity even before the pandemic. And what kind of spurred it was in Florida, we're no stranger to attacks on tourism spending and the TDT, right?
Right.
Some of you out in the viewership right now might remember some of the struggles to maintain funding for Visit Florida. So seeing that happen at the state level and seeing some of what the legislators were attempting to do in terms of broadening the acceptable uses for our bed tax, led me to try to figure out a way to calculate the ROI, just a number, dollar for dollar, what we were returning to our local economy as a DMO. Mm-hmm. And that's where it started. And then once we hit the pandemic, it became my pandemic pet project, PPP, not to be confused with Paycheck Protection Program, different PPP, although maybe it did turn into a Paycheck Protection Program. I don't know. But it became my pet project to try to help other DMOs that might be facing a similar struggle in the face and in the wake of the pandemic and the impacts it had on all of our ability to maintain funding, maintain staff, and everything of that nature. And then it's kind of continued because, as we've seen through recovery, those occupancy tax collections have started to come back up for a lot of folks. And now there needs to be a discussion about what's the best use for this revenue. Do we go back to the old model, or do we look and see what's actually working from kind of the big department standpoint and figuring out where to plug in that additional revenue?
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a tool that's very needed. Data, to be able to get that to access to some of that information very easily and quickly is something that's important, right? And it's something we can count on. I think is important as well, right? So let's get then into like how it works, right? Because you've done a really good job of making this incredibly easy. How can DMOs use this tool?
That's a great question. So if you go to the website right now, it'll give you a little bit of a background of some of the types of data that you'll need or are kind of recommended inputs for the model. There's a bit of flexibility in there. So that's just impactulator.com. And if you go into the About section, you'll see all of the definitions for the different data that we ask for. But essentially, you take the output of a lot of your sources of data, a lot of your reporting tools that you have already, on an annualized basis, so it can kind of smooth out for seasonality, smooth out for the really stellar campaigns, and then smooth out for the ones that maybe didn't perform as expected, and look at it at the macro scale, because we all know it takes a while, right, for our tourism promotion efforts to really pay off in terms of visitation. So you take those annual metrics and plug them in, and some of them are as simple as what year are you calculating for? That's the second question on the form, right behind what do you want to nickname this report. And the reason it's that high up is because all of your data sources should align to that. And then it asks things like, how many employees did you have at the time? What was your budget by 4 major departments? So overall, and then you've got your personnel, and then your 4 major departments, which would be marketing and communications, your national sales efforts. If you have a sports commission, put that in there. And if you have a meeting sales department, you put it in there as well. And then you also drop in your metrics for the production of those various departments. How many room nights were picked up because of your meeting sales efforts? Now, if we're all using Simple View CRM, which I'm sure the viewers are because they're listening to this and watching this, it's easy enough to pop those numbers out of the CRM and drop them into place. And if you're using the DI Economic Impact Calculator, which integrates with Simple View CRM as well, easy enough to grab that metric and drop it in. We have some fallback information that we've worked with partners like Arrive List to help provide in case some of the users don't have the arrivalist information in terms of overnight stay lift to really understand the performance, the impact of media beyond the vanity metrics that you've used in the past, like impressions, that type of thing. In all, there's about 30 something questions. And we realize that not every DMO has a VP of insights or a research manager that can sit down and plug it all in immediately. So there's a helpful printable worksheet. So whoever's in charge of the entry can go around to the various departments, agencies, collect the data, drop it in. And then in about 3 minutes after you hit submit, notification comes through, you've got your report ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, about as simple as you could probably make it in this day and age, right? And imagine it will evolve over time as you're able to add more and more, collect feedback. Things naturally change, dialogues change, the narratives change, the words we use sometimes change. And we've heard a lot about that stuff coming out of DI and other places. So I love the flexibility of that and how you've carved it into these different markets or segments within the organization, I think is a smart way to build this out. So again, you get this nice output of this nice report that then you can then, I imagine, copy or put that into, share that with who you want to share that with, right? Or use it internally as an indicator to know, hey, am I winning or losing? Do I need to pull some different levers or whatever it may be? So it provides flexibility that way. So again, awesome. Super simple to get set up. I'd highly encourage everybody out there to give that a shot and reach out to Jason on that side. It's a really, really good product, simple to use, affordable. So I want to ask you one thing, Jason, then on the back end of this, and something we've been asking a lot of folks in, being that you have this, application background, deep understanding of data, to put something like this together is not easy. So any advice maybe that you might have for destination marketers out there that you want to leave as a last note of today's show?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It would be kind of advice that I follow. So coming from Universal Orlando Resort, we have all that transactional level data where you can kind of tie it to an individual and their party and really understand everything that that individuals are producing before their visit, during their visit, and if they become repeat visitors, kind of that customer lifetime value. Look at the metrics, I would say, that those types of companies have at their disposal, and then figure out what you have that can help stitch together a similar metric, a comparable metric for the destination space. And that's kind of one of the things that led to Impactulator. Was we knew we didn't have a way of regularly reporting out on ROI because we didn't have control of the transaction, so we didn't have the transactional data. But if you take your basic equation for whatever metric you're looking at, ROI or whatever, chances are you can break it down enough and you'll have those variables to plug in and extrapolate some sort of value. Even if it's directional, at least you can compare it year over year. And then if you happen to develop something like Impactulator, you can use that as a benchmark against other organizations as well. So I would say just kind of look towards outside the DMO space to figure out what we should be measuring and then just try to path forward.
Yeah, great advice. I'd agree with you. As we become more data driven with our approaches, and as our stakeholders are expecting more from us, we're going to have to do those things. It's going to be coming from like just a few folks starting to do that to just being the norm very soon. So getting in and doing some of these type of things and starting to look at this type of data, combine these metrics, which you're talking about, find those adjacencies, I think is a smart advice. And so again, Jason, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing this. I think this is a really good thing that DMO should at least explore and check out. Again, we'll provide some information in the show links as well. And listen, as this thing starts to evolve, I'd love to have you come on in the future and come back and share a little bit more with us about how this has evolved after we start to grow the data set a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And this is kind of unique in the marketplace. It's a tool built by DMOs for DMOs. And that's exactly the plan. Is as more DMOs come on board and we get the feedback of what it should become in the future, our plan is to incorporate that and make sure that the product grows to suit those needs. And we did that already in the short history of it, from just a simple ROI calculation to dynamically creating narratives for 4 distinct audiences, creating comparison reports. All sorts of things are baked right in, and it's all at the same flat rate at this point.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great to hear that. So thanks for tuning in each and every week. If you're not subscribed, folks, please do so now. We're also available on Spotify and iTunes through audio podcast. So thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in each and every week. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.